an introduction and historical review of Destroying the Homeland. Oh, say, can you see? Excerpt of Chapter 1, Destroying the Homeland, an overview. In 2024, you are observing an unprecedented version of America, where the extent of a nation's decline due to 4 years of inadequate and corrupt governance is becoming evident. I present an unabashed, neoconservative perspective on the current events unfolding in our country, including the deteriorating state of governance, pervasive government corruption and agency, weaponization, foreign affairs failure, escalating immorality, racial segregation, deliberate undermining of the African American culture, the potential for civil war and global conflict, the erosion of our democratic system, the emergence of a monocratic government, the transformation of our social fabric, and the observable impact on our voting demographics in America due to irregular migration and open borders. It is flabbergasting to observe how such a significant number of Americans are either unable or unwilling to perceive the extensive damage taking place in our nation and the erosion of societal norms, including the deceptive disenfranchising of the African American culture over several decades. In this second book, I present numerous contentious and thought-provoking inquiries for the reader to ponder and reflect upon, with the intent to challenge your norms and hopefully think outside the constructed narratives in society. Awaken America before it is too late. As a note, most of the topics and areas covered interrelate on some level, so overlapping concepts, views, and information are unavoidable. Currently, the United States is engaged in a complex and interconnected conflict that spans both domestic and international arenas, involving political, ideological, and religious forces. The failures in these three domains are the driving force behind our military conflicts. The resolution of these conflicts will determine whether America can maintain its position as the land of the free and one nation under God, while remaining loyal to its inherent Judeo-Christian values and established traditions. The United States faces the potential loss of its individuality and international reputation as a champion of fairness, tranquility, and democratic values in governance. In my opinion, most of this is driven by the economic and power ambitions of the deep state, including the military-industrial complex and the liberal democratic New World Order. The mechanism used to brainwash the American electorate is the democratic media complex, which coordinates with the deep state in pushing a concerted narrative for consumption. In today's America, where the liberal democratic socialist machine controls most of the research outlets, that is, Google Scholar and AI, it is increasingly difficult to get unbiased research material, and most universities' research papers are heavily liberal slanted. Conservative views are similar to being Jewish on campus. It's just not tolerated by academia or the students. It is essential to remember now more than ever that free and impartial media from state control is the counterbalance to the entrenched deep state indoctrination. Without this counterbalance, the information is skewed and the people are misled on a mass scale, as is occurring today. The global arena and our domestic governance issues are not as black and white as you are led to believe by the politicians and media complex. However, a tangled web of deceit and power struggles exists, with the American people caught between the shadow power elitists behind America's leadership and the people's vision for our nation. American foreign policy affects the world, and the reasoning and analysis behind formulating our policies, global, domestic, are essential to understand, as our national survival and global positioning depend on them. National identity is a critical conversation that needs to be addressed in America. It concerns preserving national core values as we witness the steady decline of national identities in many European countries due to irregular migration and their unwillingness to assimilate within the host nation. This is not a manufactured talking point. I urge you to watch foreign YouTube, news station coverage, and Asian news feeds as the catastrophe in Europe from open borders and liberal policies becomes clear. The CDC, Center for Disease Control, released data on February 2, 2024, indicating that in September of the previous year, the number of migrant encounters at the southern border exceeded the number of births in the United States. This statistic indicates that the Liberal Democratic Socialist Party is making progress towards substituting Americans and our fundamental principles with undocumented immigrants who do not share our values and lack the intention to integrate and contribute to the growth of our nation under a unified flag. In essence, they are effectively altering the demographics of America prematurely. On the domestic front, our homeland is being destroyed. It is absolutely mind-boggling the destructive forces acting on our society. America has never been so divided in my time. In three short years, 2021 to 2024, the United States has transcended from prosperity and relative calm to rapidly descending into a cauldron of racial hatred, racial division, political discord, declining values and beliefs, exploding crime, civil disturbances, public property destruction, population demographic manipulation, vote pandering, political persecution, judicial and government corruption, failure to protect the homeland, federal government overreach, political alignment of states in the Union against the federal government, and now the possibility of a looming civil war is entirely possible. What is happening in our nation reads like an apocalyptic novel. You couldn't make it up if you tried. Therefore, in order to avoid this situation, it is imperative that we restore efficient governance and strong leadership, reunite the nation under one flag, and implement strategic long-term planning while also adjusting our trajectory and mitigating the harmful influences that are eroding our democratic procedures. An actively involved and well-informed voting population with a strong president and effective governance practices will be crucial in achieving this monumental task. 1. Is the American electorate prepared to tolerate the erosion and compromise of constitutional safeguards and institutions and the destruction of our democratic process? The blatant attack on the democratically chosen Republican presidential candidate through the weaponization of the state and federal judicial systems, courts, DA, federal justice and intelligence agencies, FBI, CIA, NSA, and the corruption of the election process. Additionally, independent media organizations are used as party surrogates to push misinformation, to indoctrinate the electorate, and propagate censorship of free speech. Furthermore, do we comprehend the national security threats that the Biden administration is exposing the country to through its lack of leadership in the geopolitical arena and insecure borders? Do we suffer from intellectual blindness? Open your eyes and take note of the travesties that are taking place both in the United States and around the world. 2. The inquiries that ensue are whether the United States of America's foreign policies and interference throughout the last century have contributed to the current state of global alliances and insecurity, and whether it is necessary to reconcile with Islamic nations and the international community as the democratic complex advocates. 3. Have our American domestic policies, identity politics, and toxic politicking created our rapid social decay, racial hatred, cultural divisions and isolation, and transformation of our social construct to the point where a civil war might be on the horizon to save our nation? 4. Is the United States able to maintain its government integrity, domestic stability, hegemony, and competitive advantage globally while combating the destabilizing forces of socialism, libertarianism, environmental activism, the world international order, migratory multiculturalism, Islamism, and existing destructive global doctrine and alliances. 5. Given the modification of military doctrine, the prioritization of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, indoctrination over combat effectiveness, and the depletion of assets, for example, equipment abandoned in Afghanistan and arsenals emptied to assist Ukraine, does it compromise our ability to project strength in the peace through strength equation and maintain dominance over the great power competitors? 6. Are we Americans ready to acknowledge the internal catalysts that push the U.S. towards war and the need for a divided world alliance and a designated bad guy to sustain the operation and economics of our deep state and the military-industrial complex? My core belief. At the outset, to avoid confusion on where I stand politically, globally, and socially, let me declare my modified belief system steeped in neoconservatism while adopting a blend of nationalist and globalist doctrine, which I ascribe to. I believe in A. Placing America first, B. Judeo-Christian values and belief system, C. Projecting peace through strength, D. Global shared hegemony, and EE. A global partner in encouraging economic wealth through multilateral trade and international security alliances, making obsolete the global power divisions of the Cold War era. It is imperative for American policies to undergo a transformation in order to establish a new direction toward national economic prowess, leadership, and the establishment of a fresh global order that encourages dialogue before bullets. The necessity for global progress is evident as the previous East-West and European alliances have demonstrated their propensity for causing significant harm and hindering peaceful and economically sustainable coexistence. Without effective leadership and unity, the only foreseeable outcome is mutual destruction. We as a nation must address the current issues by utilizing the existing facts and the most recent emerging trends. Irrespective of my beliefs, the book leans towards identifying destructive policies, regardless of the political party. Instead, it is grounded in a well-defined belief system that is backed by factual evidence and current events publicly displayed in society. The book highlights the threats to our democracy and the potential for the United States to be drawn into a global conflict and, worse, domestic civil war. As highlighted in my previous book, I will reiterate that uncritically adhering to party ideologies is deleterious to the democratic process. The guiding principles should be based on objective facts and impartial analysis, prioritizing the citizens' interests and considering the nation's overall improvement. The writings incorporate perspectives and interpretations of fact-based information influenced by my multicultural heritage, variegated socialization experiences, religious exposure, Christian, Islamic, and Hindu, academic background, and professional assessment. A number of the concerns that have been delineated are often avoided for fear of social exclusion and liberal demonization. Consequently, I am convinced that these matters merit investigation and significantly affect the future well-being of our familial unit and our country, one nation under God. It is essential to consider and analyze different perspectives in order to fully grasp the complexities of the issues at hand. This is a crucial element in being a democratic society. Failing to embrace diverse perspectives and suppressing contrary opinions will condemn us to a state of ignorance, which is obviously prevalent in contemporary American society. The current political landscape in America is marked by deliberate efforts from the Democratic Socialist Liberal faction to suppress speech and viewpoints that deviate from the established norms. These actions bear resemblance to the principles of socialism and communism. We must refrain from being a shallow electorate and peel back the layers of deception in the proverbial onion to see the true endgame of the liberal democratic socialist complex.